Welcome to the webcast. This is going to be about what everyone really needs to know to engage listeners. And there's really never been a better time to use your voice because you have a message for the world that the world really needs to hear. And most of us haven't really been taught how to communicate effectively. And this is whether it's online or giving a presentation. These tips I'm going to share with you will help for either one of those cases. Now, how to get the most out of this webcast. The next 45 minutes or so, I want you to think about what do I really want to get out of this webcast? Because when you have a clear intention, chances are very good you're going to achieve that intention. But without an intention, you don't really get the same results. So what do you want? That's a really good question for all of us to ask ourselves. What do you want? What would make your life easier when you're communicating your message with other people? What is it that is holding you back? What is it that you say, if I could just change this one thing, everything in my life would be so much easier? So think about that intention you want to get out of this webcast. Make a mental note or jot it down and then regroup at the end of it. Also, take a few minutes afterwards to identify what's most relevant to you. It's so easy in this world to go, okay, what's my email? What's on my email? Or I got to check my Facebook or whatever it is, to go right into the next thing. But I guarantee if you take a few minutes and regroup after this webcast and say, okay, that was the one thing that really landed for me, and then you make use of it, you actually implement the ideas in your next speaking engagement. The speed of implementation is key. When you use that in the next presentation you have, it's going to really land for you. I know I was just down in LA, or Fort Bragg, California, at the Living Light Institute, and down there on the way back, my study buddy and I had 13 hours to review everything we had learned over the weekend, and it was amazing how much deeper it went in us. You know, just you really got an understanding when you could talk it back and forth, back and forth. So you may not have 13 hours, but if you have 5 minutes to regroup, that's really going to help you tremendously. And for me, the early years, I was terrified of public speaking. I did everything possible to avoid it. I got through high school and college without ever having to do a public speech because I could work my way around getting in front of a group of people and actually speaking up. Then I was a real estate appraiser for about 13 or 14 years, so I didn't have to talk to people. And one day I realized, you know what? You have got to get over this fear, because it was like a prison. I was so terrified, and it's like, especially in 2011 and beyond, we really have to find a way to connect with other people if we're going to grow, if we're going to move forward in this world. So for me, as scared as I was, I still found a way. I did tons of personal development and a lot of speaking tips that I'm going to share with you in the next 45 minutes or so. But how can we get over that? And even if you don't have a fear of public speaking, maybe there's a way that you can be more effective to have more clarity. Maybe it's to be more concise so that your message is actually well received by people and they go, huh, I think I'm going to take action on those ideas. So whatever your message is, how can you say it more effectively? And so I went on after all of that learning, and I'm still learning today all kinds of things, but I went on to give public seminars all across Australia, all across Canada and the United States, and now online. And I'm finding that, yeah, I sit in my hotel room sometime at night going, is this me? Is this that person that was so terrified of public speaking? So I just say that because I know if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's just a matter of practice and getting really clear on your message. And since that time, I've been helping a lot of people, a lot of social entrepreneurs, which I love to work with because they have this mission. It isn't just for the money. It's like probably you're doing it because you feel called to really share what you know with the rest of the world. And every voice counts. There isn't one person in any seminar I've ever done where what they had to say wasn't important. Once they really get clear on, this is how I see the world through my knothole, this is what I see, and I need to share it with people. And especially what I've found, Those people who have been the observers for most of their lives, they see what's going on. They see things in a different way, but yet they don't always speak up about it. So if you've been one of those people who has been the observer with a lot of information, a lot of awareness, a lot of discernment, you are exactly the person who needs to learn how to speak up and share what you've been seeing over the world, over your whole lifetime. What have you seen? What is it that has brought you to this point where you say, I need to share that with the rest of the world? So myth number one, there's so many myths about public speaking. The first one is, I've got to get all my words right. Have you ever been in that place? I was. When I first started speaking, I would do every single word and just memorize everything so that the words were right. But you know what? What people really want is they want to feel your authenticity. They want to feel that you are real and genuine and authentic about your message. So the nonverbal messages are actually much more important than getting every single word just right. And besides that, if you are trying to be perfect, just know that your audience, it's hard for them because then they feel like they have to be perfect. So if you make a mistake once in a while, it's okay. It's all right, as long as you're clear in your message and your nonverbals are congruent with your message. Like, for example, you see somebody and they say, I really want to bring people together. You know, it's incongruent, right? So if you say, I really want to bring people together, and you're secure about that and you really know what you want to say, then your nonverbals will automatically match the words you're saying, and that's where trust goes up, and trust is everything now. People are so hypercritical about, oh, can't trust that person. We know it. You know, it's like, oh, that person, I don't think so. Maybe not consciously, but unconsciously we're always tapping into, is this person believable, trustworthy? And a big part of that is if your nonverbals match what your words are saying. Myth number two is people always debate what I have to say, especially when you have something that you're saying that is controversial. You always get this, oh no, you know, and people want to debate back and forth. And if you get into that where it's like, no, this is the way to go. No, this is the way to go. And you're debating back and forth, you really need to bring in more stories, because stories bring people together. And you're not telling people what to do. They come up with their own conclusions. So how can you use more personal stories? People can't argue if you're telling a personal story about what's happened to you and what you've seen in your life. They can't argue with that. So bring in more stories, which we're going to talk about. And myth number three is people won't remember my message. There are so many people talking about so many important topics out there. How are they ever going to remember my message? Well, they won't if you're not focused. If you have a theme throughout your entire talk, people will walk out of your room or out of your webinar or whatever it is saying, that's the person who is talking about this. So if you have a theme going throughout your talk, people will be able to remember it. Keep it simple. The greatest tendency we have when we're experts in the field, maybe you're in healthcare or whatever it is, if you've been doing it for more than a few years, you are an expert. And you want to share everything that you've learned in a short amount of time, and if it gets scattered all over the place, you're doing more of a disservice for people, and they will walk out and they won't remember anything. So if you have one clear theme and you repeat that throughout, people will remember your message, which is very cool. And when I was writing my book, Giving Voice to Your Cause, I'm in the Seattle area, so I went around to different nonprofits, and I started interviewing the executive directors, and I heard some of the most amazing stories. I was like, I want to volunteer for that group. Then I'd go to another one the next day, and they had such amazing stories. I was like, oh, this cause is amazing. I want to volunteer for that group. Or I want to donate to that group. And it went on and on and on. Every one of them had a really amazing cause that they were working for. So the reason I bring that up is, will your voice be heard over all the other voices out there, all the other great causes that people have? Are you going to speak in a way that people want to support your mission? So who do you listen to? That's the question. Who do you listen to? Do you listen to people with a lot of passion? Is that the thing that really makes you want to listen to them? Or is it more storytellers? Are you the kind of person who goes, oh, that's a great story. I love listening to that person. Or do you like humor? Do you like humor? Or authenticity, when you just feel like that guy or that gal was so authentic, I could listen to her all day long. So think for a moment, what is it? And I'll just ask you guys here, what is it for you that you listen to? You love a good story?
I love humor.
You love humor. Yeah, and a combination is always great too, right? And it depends on the situation. I work with a lot of pretty difficult situations, and people say, okay, Pamela, there is suffering of children, animals, men and women all over the world, the planet, and you expect me to use humor? But I'll tell you, humor comes from the Latin word humor, which means fluid and flexible. And if you are fluid and flexible, you will be in a better position to make a change. And the opposite of that is rigid, which is breakable. So if you're very rigid, we don't want you broken out there. We want you to be able to be fluid and flexible and to be able to talk about this with some levity. If you've ever noticed this, when somebody has a really heavy topic, you can feel the energy in the room. The whole energy is just like, oh my God, and they need a tension reliever. So if you're talking about this terrible situation, and yes, you're going to be congruent when it's not funny, you're not going to be laughing, but every once in a while, if you can throw in something, it just lets people relieve that tension. So that you can just feel it's like, oh, okay, thank you, or just breathe or something, because people, if they're holding tight after they've heard something like that, they won't be able to hear anything else you have to say, and also they're not going to be able to take action because it paralyzes people. Okay, so let's talk about passion first of all. Passion. It says here in red, you see, I can only be influenced by those who first attract my attention. Right? You can't be influenced by anybody if your attention isn't on them. So you've got to attract people's attention. You have to have passion about it. But like with everything I've learned over the years, balance is key. Okay? If you don't have enough passion and you talk like this, no one is going to listen to you. But if you have so much passion, like I did in the beginning, my poor audiences, you know, it's more like anger rather than a true passion. So if it's that tipping point where it turns into frustration and anger, that's no longer passion. That's simply anger. And a good way to test this when you're using passion is, are you going toward what you want? Do you see a vision in the world? And you can talk about, I have a dream, you know, kind of thing. That is going toward a vision rather than, oh my God, this world, look at what's wrong. And oh, you want to go toward your vision when you're using passion. And first impressions are with appearance, with tone of voice, and with your overall demeanor. And we don't have time to talk about all of those, but I would like to give you a few tips that you can use today on using your tone of voice. And I had to work on this so much because we all have what's called a slipper voice. And a slipper voice is something you feel very comfortable with. And you use it all the time. And no matter what your voice is, if there's no change, people will say, okay, this person's predictable. I know what they're going to say next. You've got to change your voice up a little bit. And at first I thought, I don't want to do that. I will feel stupid. I will feel silly. But then I thought, is this going to be more effective for my audience? Is it easier for you to listen to when someone changes their voice a little bit? Usually, yeah. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do it for them. Do it for the audience so it's easier for them to listen to you. So first one is raising your pitch. So you see, it says, I'll say it just monotone the first time. Your contribution is extremely important. Oh, kind of a yawner, right? But if I change the pitch, I say, your contribution is extremely important. You know, you just pick one word. Radio personnel do this all the time where they pick one word in the sentence and they emphasize that one word. And you can play around with it. This is something you can do when you're reading to your kids or when you're reading to yourself, you're reading the newspaper, whatever. Pick one sentence and pick a different word. And notice the effect it has when you change one word. Your contribution is extremely important. Is different than your contribution is extremely important. It has a totally different meaning. So what is it? And it will liven you up as well when you pick that one word that's most important. And then the next point here is to stretch out your words, right? So what is the one word that you could stretch out a little bit? And yeah, it's kind of silly. You're not going to do it to that degree, but play with it and get your own results. See if people don't listen to you more when you use your voice differently. Your voice is your best tool ever. Secret. Okay. Their vegan food is delicious. Ah, their vegan food is delicious. Different, right? You're listening more, yeah? And then pausing. This is something you can learn from comedians as well. It's all in the pause, right? It's how you say things. When he finished speaking, people were ready to give. Okay, yeah. People aren't really listening to that, right? You're not listening to that, okay? When he finished speaking, people were ready to give. But if you say something like, when he finished speaking, people were ready to give, makes a difference. I worked with a guy one time, and it was so amazing because this guy really believed that his organization was all about trust. So he kept saying, our organization is all about trust. And it was like so boring. Nobody was listening, right? So I said, how about if you pause for 4 counts before you say that word trust? And so the other clients and I were holding up our fingers so that he would actually pause. And he said, the thing about our organization is trust. He could not wait 4 counts. He couldn't do it. And we just like, try it again, try it again. And so he goes, our organization is about trust. He could not hold it in. So we said, okay, now just breathe. Just breathe. You know, you're going to wait 4 counts. So this time, finally, after working, it took a while, you know. We become habituated. But after a while, he goes, our organization is all about trust. And the way he said it was amazing. I mean, it's like at that point, you could feel everyone in the room breathe. It was just like, okay, he actually is feeling what he's saying. It's not just a parrot. He's actually feeling this, and he actually cares enough about people to go, I'm going to pause. So you know the impact of this. So you know that we really are about trust. It isn't just a motto where we say we're all about trust. We really, I mean, I could feel that moment where a client really trusted me with everything they had. So it makes a huge difference. And again, we've been kind of trained to just be little robots. It's kind of sad, don't you think? We've been trained to just say things a certain way, and all of this, the work I do is a lot about untraining. It's chipping away all of those things that aren't real for us so that we can have the effect when we're speaking to people. So we talked about stories. Why stories? Why? I get this from a lot of executive directors and people who say, no, I don't have time for stories. You know, it's going to seem silly to the people I talk to, you know, very important people who I talk to, you know, we can't tell a story. So they use a lot of facts and statistics, and people go to sleep, and it's not the emotional connection that we need. So I put on the slide here, Secret Service agents studied storytelling so that they, if they suddenly found themselves in the back of the car with the president for 5 minutes, they could quickly summarize pertinent facts about a situation in a format that was likely to be absorbed. So if the Secret Service agents are learning about storytelling, I mean, just imagine these guys are all in the little room learning, how can we put this huge, you know, issue in front of someone in 5 minutes or less? And they found stories work the best. So if you've ever thought that stories were superficial or meaningless or people really need more facts and figures, think again, because stories are very powerful. People will remember them. And I think stories have gotten a bad rap because people go on so long. People tell stories and it goes, oh, and then this happened, and then all of a sudden they think about another thing, and the story goes all over the place, and it becomes so long that people have checked out. So we got to learn how to tell a story concisely so that people do listen to it and it makes an impact for them. The characteristics of a good story: a single theme, like we talked about, clearly defined, vivid word pictures. Like this guy was so sore, he could hardly move in his chair. And he was in so much pain. He's a tall, lanky guy, he just clumsily walked through the door. So something like that is vivid, and then people can see it, and then they are right there with you. If you say a guy walked through the door, they're not really there. It's not vivid enough for them to see what you're talking about. Pleasing sounds and rhythms, we've talked about that. And characterization. If you are playing a character, and let's say, for example, you're telling a story about, tell a story about my dad, right? And then you say, and then my dad said this, and then my dad said that, and then my mom came in, my mom said that. Kind of boring, right? But if you say, I was sitting at the table, my dad comes in, and then you don't even have to say my dad comes in. You just play out the part. Good morning, Pamela. Or you say it in his voice. You say it in their voice. And then mom comes around the corner, and you can change it a little bit, and it's really fun that way. So you're bringing in the characters. Dramatic appeal, people love drama. I think drama is why we feel alive on this planet. But we don't necessarily need catastrophes to feel alive. If you just play it out in a dramatic way, that will make people feel alive. It'll make you feel alive too. And is it appropriate to your listeners? We'll go over that in the next slide. I wanted to give you a really brief, and I know we're covering a lot of information, but you can go over and listen to this again. I just want to give you all the information I can in this time so that you can go out and really be more effective with your talk. But a structure that I learned in improv for storytelling is once upon a time and every day until one day, that's called the tilt, the tipping point, and because of that, until finally, and ever since that day. So you fill in all of those, right? But if you're thinking, I don't know how to tell a story, this will give you a structure on how to start that story so it doesn't end up going scattered all over the place. Okay. Specific moods call for specific stories. Let's say your audience is apathetic. Yeah, you know, what am I going to do? You know, it's like, what can one person do in the world? Or they're cynical. Oh, that's never going to work. It's never going to work. You tell me all this stuff's never going to work. You know, resentful, jealous, hopeless, all of those different emotions. If your audience is feeling a certain way, the more you can tap in and tell a specific story. If the general mood of your audience is apathetic, for example, share a story where one person really made a huge difference. If they're cynical, you're going to tell a story where you have real hard facts, where you can tell them exactly how that made a difference. And why humor? Why? Why do we need humor? We gotta have humor, especially living in the world today, because it builds rapport and liking with the person, and it makes people want to listen more, relaxes the person, makes them more receptive to the message. And, you know, if you have somebody and you can tell there's a barrier, like nothing is getting through, no matter what you say, it's not getting through because of that invisible barrier. If you have some humor, guess what? They breathe and that barrier comes down so they can actually take in your message. Makes the information more memorable, and it distracts the person from thinking about counter arguments. If there's no humor, it's very easy to say, yeah, but that's all well and good, but listen to my story. Simple ways to increase your humor level. If you're the kind of person who says, I'm just not funny, I don't have a funny bone. Guess what? Everyone has a funny bone. It just takes a little practice. So one thing you can do is, well, if you can go to an improv class, that's really great because you're going to learn the whole foundation of the yes and approach. The yes and approach can be very funny. It doesn't mean that you cave on your ideas, but you take what that person's given you as what we call an offering, a gift. You acknowledge the person. Let's say they said something that was so counter to what you're thinking about. You acknowledge it in a way that you say, I see you, I hear you, and this is my thought. Rather than what I did in the beginning was no, but. And that pushes people away. It starts this tension, and the seriousness comes into play. So you want to do yes and rather than no, but. Yes, I see your idea. I understand where you're coming from, and here's my thought. So that helps a lot. That if you take one thing out of the seminar, that is huge. You can live your life like it's a lucid dream, like you can just go through life and you can just, yes, I see that, and you know, it's an amazing tip for living life and giving presentations, talking to people one-on-one. Next one is to start a humor journal. Have you ever thought of that? Start a humor journal. I did this. You know, you take a little notebook, or if you have an iPhone, your little notebook application on there, and you go around life. You go, how is this funny? How is this funny? How is this funny? And you start looking for things, and you will be amazed how you jot those little things down. You start to train your brain to look for the humor in a situation. And again, I'm not saying that everything in life is funny. There are some real serious things that happen, but you'll be in a position to work through that. You know, you take the toughest situation in your life, and you ask yourself, how could I make this a stand-up routine? That's your assignment. You do that tonight. And first of all, you're not going to have all that stress in your body. That's going to help a lot because it just alleviates a lot of the stress. I took a situation, that road trip back from California, we had one catastrophe after another. It's like, how can anything else happen? How can the starter go out? How can the alternator go out? How can we get lost on GPS in the middle of Oregon on gravel roads and go round and round? How can we come across shale in the road? I mean, there were so many things. It was just, I mean, it got to the point where it's like, what next? But we laughed the whole way home because we were looking for, how is this funny? And I think that really helped us to be fluid and flexible, to be able to get through the situation. Look for humor, and you not only help yourself, you help everyone around you too. Because who likes to be around a serious person who's just like, serious all the time? You know, you're going to do your cause a real favor. You know, if you're speaking up for the animals, if you're speaking up for children, your ability to go through life with ease and grace not only helps you, it helps what your purpose in life is as well. And then satire, I just encourage people to look for the comedians you respect. You know, like, who do you love? I love Jon Stewart. I listen to The Daily Show, and you look for those comedians that really make you laugh. You emulate their style. You watch how they pause. You watch their facial expressions. You watch everything about them, and then you ask, how can I incorporate this and make it my own? So it's in your skin. You've learned from them, but you're not being them. You're going to take that and say, I really like that style. How can I use that with my message? And on to authenticity. It's so important, wouldn't you say? Everybody can feel it, especially now. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, there was so much pretense in the world that, you know, it just wasn't like it is today. Now people can spot it like that. They go in a minute, that guy is fake, that guy is trying to be something he's not, or she's just putting on an act. But when people are real, you feel it. And then that's when progress really happens. And it says here, reflecting true self, not simulated to achieve a particular effect or to meet social conventions or to make money. That's huge. That is huge. And you think, most people say, oh no, I'm honest, I'm authentic. But think about it for a minute. The last few days, you know, when you were speaking to people, was there ever anything in there that you said it to achieve a particular effect? I bet there was. Or to meet social conventions. Oh, well, everyone speaks like that. I better go like this. Or to make money. I mean, we're all like, got to pay the rent. We got to get these things done. Are you speaking from that place or what's real for you? And it's counterintuitive because we've been trained, if you speak a certain way, you're going to get this result. But that way is dead and gone. That is so last year. So it's kind of tough to say, if I just say what's on my mind, I'm going to lose everything. But the thing is, now you will gain everything if you just say what's true for you and you're secure and confident in yourself, that's when everything shifts. And I wish that for all of us. I mean, imagine living on a planet where people are connected, so you're not being rude to people, but you are saying exactly what you feel in the moment. So, thinking on your feet. I thought I was the only one who had a hard time with this. When somebody had asked me a tough question, we actually stopped breathing because I can't believe that person asked me that question. And we give an answer, if you're like most people, and then you walk away going, dang, why didn't I just say this? That would have been so much better, but it's too late. So what I've learned over a long time researching what works is this thinking on your feet, the 5-step process. Now, you got to know your values as a foundation for all of it. And then once you know your values, when you speak in a way with these 5 steps, you will walk away going, yes, that is exactly what I wanted to say. And it's beautiful because people are saying, okay, I get her. And you're walking away going, clean, clear, I'm done. You don't have to go home to your significant other and go, you know what, I really, blah, 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 blah. It's all a waste of time, right? So these 5 steps work every time. I forget to use them sometimes, but when I come back to it, it works. So the first thing is to listen to the question. That sounds simple, right? Listen to the question, but so many of us are off thinking about what we're going to do next or what happened yesterday, that we're not really present, listening. What word did they emphasize? If they say, why are you vegan, is different than, why are you a vegan? It's totally different. They want to know something different. So you're going to watch their body language. You're really going to be present in that moment and listen to what the question really is. And also listen, is it really a question, or are they just making a statement in, disguise? A lot of people say something like, hey, do you want to move the couch over there? It's not a question. That is a statement. But most people are afraid to just state what they want, so they pose it in a question instead. So listen, make sure it's a question, and then when it is, listen to body language, everything about how they're saying it. Then you're going to pause. Take one full breath. Most people say, if I didn't respond right away, they wouldn't listen to me. But you know what? If you reactively give an answer, that is a reactive answer. It's what you think they want to hear. It's not a proactive answer. And also, if you're not pausing, you're not giving your brain the fuel it needs to actually think properly. So you take 2 seconds to breathe. And if they don't allow you that, guess what? They really didn't want to know your answer anyway. So when you take a breath, you pause, and then you respond. You're giving your brain what it needs to think clearly. And if you've ever been in a networking situation, you're saying, I couldn't think of what to say, chances are you were holding your breath. And your brain just wasn't getting what it needed to think properly. Okay. And then number 3 is to repeat the question. And I get a lot of people saying, I hate that when people repeat the question. So you're asking me if I want to take the garbage out. No, that's not what I mean by this one. Repeat the question is to really be so in sync with that person that you're saying, so you're asking me about how I feel about my communication skills, for example. That way you have this alignment, and it feels good when your intention is, I want to be on the same page with you. And they're going, yeah, that's what I'm asking. And it also gives you a chance to really ask yourself that question. A lot of times people haven't asked themselves, how do I feel about this? And then you can give a really solid answer. It's cool when you practice this. And then number 4 is to respond honestly. And you ask yourself, what is the most honest thing I could say in this moment? And that can be really, really tough, but it's very effective. I've done this with thousands of people, and I had one woman come up to the front of the room. We were practicing this, and she stood there, and I said, Linda, what do you like best about your job? She goes, I'm a people person. I really like people. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I actually didn't do step 1, 2, or 3. I said, you want to try it again? She goes, yeah, sure, okay. I said, you got all the time in the world. I said, just really listen to what that question is. I want you to take one full breath. I want you to repeat the question and then say the most honest thing you can say. So this time I said, Linda, what do you like best about your job? This time she was looking at me. You know, we actually had eye contact. She took one full breath. It's amazing. She said, so you're asking me what I like best about my job? Yeah. You know, I don't really like my job at all. And people laughed. You know, the audience, they were laughing, and she kind of laughed a little bit, but it was almost like her face did this Picasso thing, and she sat down, she goes, I can't believe I've been at this job that I hate for 17 years. But that's the power when we get really honest with ourselves. It's not easy. She's going to have to go back to her boss, make some changes, but that's when progress happens. That's when people listen to us as well. So she said that, and everyone could just feel, okay, I can trust her now, because that's real. We can all feel, come on, that's so not. She was probably a parrot, like maybe she was a people person years ago, but not anymore. So what's true for you in this moment, right now? Number 5, know when to stop. So you answer a question, so many people will keep talking. Like one woman, I said, what do you like best about where you live? She did the first 4 steps. She's beautiful. She goes, listen, what do I like best about where I live? We were all like, wow, what's she going to say? She goes, you know, I'd have to say it's the birds chirping outside my window in the morning. I love that. She goes, it's so much better than the last time, because the last house I lived in is right next to 405. Had all these cars 24/7. There were kids with basketballs out. I was in a cul-de-sac, and she went on and on like that. We're like, you had us. You totally had us. But now we're not listening anymore because you're trespassing on our space. We did not ask you what you didn't like about the last house. So we have to be able to be comfortable with silence, to have that full impact of what we're saying to people, and then be able to take a breath. And it's like, you know, you toss the ball back to them. Know when to stop. Most people say, you know, I've studied this over the years, there's usually a tendency for people to have trouble with one of those 5. So in more personal coaching, we get into that, and there's usually an underlying reason why. Very interesting. Okay, so overall, to sum up all of this, the do's and don'ts. First of all, trust your heart. Trust your heart, whatever your message is. Know that there's a reason for you to share it with the rest of the world. And you know, this can sound easy, but to really trust that takes a lot. It takes a lot. Believe in your message and think bigger picture. Okay, what's the bigger picture here? Not whether or not this guy's getting bored or antsy or judging me or anything like that, but what is the bigger picture here? What is my purpose for being here? Why am I opening my mouth right now? Think about that. Think Steve Jobs, bless his heart. I mean, Steve Jobs wasn't thinking, are these guys going to judge me because I'm walking out in my jeans and doing this presentation? No, he had a bigger vision, and because of that, I just talked to somebody at the Apple store. She said she was in Paris after he died. She goes, what other CEO has flowers dropped off at the store and apples all over the store in Paris after he died? I mean, think bigger picture. That's what he's all about. What is your bigger picture? You know, how can you keep that in mind when you're speaking? 3 of the don'ts are, don't hold yourself back. This can take more effort. It did for me anyway, because I was always raised in Minnesota, you know, you talk like this, and I was holding myself back all the time. You'd think less effort. That actually took a lot of effort to hold myself back. And then finally I saw Al Pacino do his thing in And Justice for All, that movie, and he was like, don't you even care? And the way he said that, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta talk like that guy. I mean, not crazy, but it's okay when you have a mission. That's why you're on the planet, to actually speak with passion. It's okay. Have bigger gestures. When I first started speaking, my gestures were so teeny tiny, and I thought this was huge. You know, and after a while, it's like, wow, that's easy. I mean, that's so much easier than this, you know, because it's not appropriate. Okay, self-sabotage. We all have a way of self-sabotaging ourselves. Well, I shouldn't say all of us, but a good percentage of the people have this tendency to sabotage all their efforts. You don't want to go there. And lastly, don't compare yourself. If you have seen a speaker and you go, oh my God, that person is so great and I'm after them, oh, I mean, that will kill your message. So just think about, what is my message? Don't compare yourself to other people, because you are unique, every single person on this planet. So the next step toward greater proficiency, I know I've shared a lot here in the last few minutes, but to really get clear on your particular message, your unique situation, there's another step, and that is personal coaching. When you actually work with somebody who has done it for 20 years or so, and you can chip off 10 years of your learning curve, it's worth a lot. And you can learn how to think on your feet, to be more self-confident, tell magnetic stories so you actually draw people to you. It's such a cool thing. You know, you feel that energy come together in the middle. It's like lightning, you know. It doesn't come down to the earth and land on the ground. It actually comes up from the ground and down from the sky, and it meets here. And that's what you want with your audience. You want them to come toward you and you go toward them, so it's not one way or the other. And a lot less effort, a lot easier. How to add humor, your particular style of humor, and use your unique voice so that when you and I and all of us are on our deathbed, we're going, yes, I did it. That's what I was here for, and I actually did it. And because you joined this webcast, I want to give you, because you've heard like almost an hour already, I want to give you 20% off on any coaching, any training on my website. And that's a pretty big percentage, but I just want to give that to you. And if you just use the code ENGAGE LISTENERS, either when you call or email, I'll know what you're talking about. And everything's guaranteed. You know, I want you to be totally happy. I'm into the karma thing. So if you're not happy, all of your money is refunded. I know you will get benefit from it. And with the bottom line is, we really need your voice now. Whatever your message is, the world as you know it, as we all know it, really could use your voice. Not the corporate voice, not the authority voice, but what is your voice? We need to learn from each other. And extra bonus is, tell me the biggest insight that you've received from this webcast, and you get a half-an-hour coaching call free. You just tell me the one thing that really stood out for you in this webcast. It helps me as well to know what's really impactful for you. I'll give you a half-an-hour coaching call free. And so just call me. My phone number or my email is there. And thank you very much for being on this webcast.